welcome to episode 2 of Game Nexus Live, which I've just sort of Christianed it that until we come up with a better name, but I kind of like the sound of that name. It's pretty standard in podcasting industry, but it fits. Tonight we are talking about 2 topics. Every podcast we try and talk about 2 topics relating to tabletop industry and video game industry. Game Nexus is all about gaming in general. So tonight we're talking about the video game side of things, which is sequel craziness. Every year we get a flood of sequels in the video game industry, and this year we thought we'd talk about it and strip down a couple titles and see how they landed this year versus past years. And then part 2, we are talking about the tabletop industry and the ins and outs and the delicate nature of releasing or re-releasing an old game to a new generation of gamers. And we do have a couple of games in particular that launched this year, one that launched and one that is going to launch. So we'll talk about that. I am your host, Dwayne. I am co-founder of the Game Nexus. We have Josh with us, who is our video content manager. And we have Stewart from Game Nexus Studio number 1, which is head of our tabletop division. So so let's kick it off. I guess we'll jump into the video game side of things. So this year, pretty much as far as me, I don't know what your game purchasing is like, Stuart and Josh, but I pretty much came out of E3 with the decision that I wasn't even buying hardly any video games this holiday season. Like, there was nothing that hit my radar. Anything in particular that, what's your thoughts on that, Josh, as far as E3 and this year's game releases?
The only thing I am insanely hyped for is the Detroit Become Human.
Which is not this year though, right?
I know, which,
yeah.
But that is the only game that I've seen that looks just ludicrous if you have seen any of the trailers.
Yeah, I saw that trailer. That's from Quantum, what's the name of the studio that did
I don't know. You're gonna test me on this.
Is that the one? Is that the one where it had the guy who does the voice from Grey's Anatomy that I told you about?
Yeah, I believe he's in it.
Yeah, okay. He's one of the protagonists.
Bunch of different characters in it.
Guy from Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, it's the young doctor who inherited the hospital.
Dr. Avery.
Dr. Avery from Grey's Anatomy. Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Okay. Well, we should probably say to all our listeners that the only reason why we know that is because there's all of our wives and significant others watch Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's
not mine.
But no, the game looks amazing in that it actually, if you see in the trailer, seems to matter if you do certain things will affect your outcomes, which is huge because most games I find, not going too deep into this, basically it was not, well, if you deciding what's going to happen more, you just decide when it happens.
Right. Now, this isn't the company that made Heavy Rain, is it?
I don't believe so,
okay.
But I could be wrong.
While you're looking that up, Stu, I don't know if you watch E3. Did anything hit your radar video game-wise this year?
So Beyond Good and Evil 2, I saw some...
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That's a 2018 release again.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right now, really the only game I'm playing that's new is occasionally I play PUBG.
Yeah.
Haven't played it for a while now.
And that's sort of the thing for me as well. Like, you guys both just mentioned 2 games that were shown at E3, which are not going to hit the 2017 launch.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's what I found with E3 this year was they showed us a ton of cool stuff, but none of which we were going to play. The only things that we were seeming to get this year were sequels to the games that we knew we were going to get anyway every year.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I heard a lot about the new Shadow of War, I think.
Which did launch this year, so in fairness, that was
it's like, it's so depressing because all of your orc minions just keep begging to be killed. It's like,
I played the first one, Shadows of Mordor, and I really enjoyed it. But again, a sequel, right? Like not a new IP. Which is funny because Shadows of Mordor was an original IP only about a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
And now we're just going to continue to get sequels of that game, right? Like, you know that once a game does well, we're going to just inevitably get.
I find it's interesting that video games tend to be a lot slower to respond to markets than, say, films. Because, like, you think about, like, Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
We're not getting a third Independence Day movie for a long time.
Yeah.
Because this one bombed because it was awful.
But you're saying video games will try and milk consistently
but then
more.
You've got something like Assassin's Creed, which pumps out, mediocre games, but then they take like a year and a half break.
Yeah.
Right back into it.
It's a good point, because if you think about it from a development point of view, video games are, if not already there, but they're fast approaching the level of work required to make a motion picture.
So easily.
Yet it takes them years to make a motion picture sequel, but they can crank out a video game sequel in no time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my point being on the sequel side of things this year is that I looked at the radar of what games I wanted to get this year, and I took a step back and I said, wait a minute, I've got Battlefront 2, which is the sequel to last year's Battlefront, or the year before's. You've got the Call of Duty, the Assassin's Creed. Granted, they took a year off. Shadows of War. I don't even know what other sequels are probably came out this year that I didn't touch. If you can think of any, fill me in. But there just seems to be a lot of them. So I chose to take a step back and say, you know what? I've got the first iteration. Oh, Destiny 2. There we go. The biggest one, right? I didn't even mention Destiny 2.
Destiny.
Yeah. So this year I took a step back. Instead of just jumping into sequel madness like I do every year and go, oh my God, it's a sequel, it's bigger, better. I took a step back and started looking at some of these games and go, do I really need them right now? Like, there's no doubt that possibly I'll buy them, maybe when the price drops, but how urgent is my need to play the games? Destiny 2, I followed very closely. And to me, I mean, people will argue in the comments, obviously, but it looked the same. They looked like a reskinned, albeit a prettier reskin, but the same content of Destiny 1 as far as what we did in the game. What was the other one? Battlefront 2. Amazing visuals, amazing content. But I've been playing Battlefront for a year now, and I've just kind of grown tired of that gameplay. The gameplay hasn't changed in the new game, just the content that you get has changed.
Mm-hmm.
So on and so on. But there's two particular games of which you and I both own now, Josh. One is Assassin's Creed Origins and Call of Duty. So let me throw to you. Assassin's Creed, the franchise, took a year break. The last one we talked last time, was Assassin's Creed. Oh, we better get the name right. What was it? We said it last time.
We'll just
play some elevator music while you look it up. Why do I always forget the name of it? It was Assassin's Creed. It was the gang one, the Gangs of New York style one. Syndicate. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you from our tabletop gaming manager.
I don't need to know these things. I know the other games that came out this year that were E3 announced, but
you didn't. Now, what's your history with the Assassin's Creed franchise, Josh?
For me, I guess I should go like full disclosure here. I only played really Assassin's Creed 1, 2, 3,
and Revelations.
And I don't think I played Revelations.
You did, because you streamed Revelations. I remember watching your stream of Revelations.
Okay, then I played Revelations, and that's it. After playing like the third one, I felt it was good enough, and then it pretty much they just kept firing out Assassin's Creed games left, right, and center.
So you didn't play any of the next gen. You didn't play Black Flag. You didn't play Unity.
I stopped playing partly because I got bored with it, I want to say.
Okay. What was your history with the franchise, Stu?
Never played it. I mean, I think it's interesting to note that in 2014 there were 4 games released for Assassin's Creed. 4.
In 2000 what?
In 2014
there was 4 Assassin's Creed games.
Freedom Cry.
Yeah.
Creed Rogue, Creed Identity, and Unity.
And they crossed the platforms from console to handheld to mobile, right?
So Rogue was Freedom Cry and Identity were various platforms. And
Yeah.
Rogue and Unity were both main console and computer.
That's right, because Rogue was on the 360 at that transition time when the Xbox and PS3 were
insane.
transitioning to new. Yeah.
Right, and then there was one in 2015, and then all the releases in 2016 were kind of smaller, and then Origins is the most recent one.
Yeah. So you took a break then, Josh, and you know, now we have the rebooted version of Assassin's Creed. I'll consider you caught up. I mean, the prime core trilogy of the part 1, 2, and 3 in Revelations make up the real core franchise for Assassin's Creed. What is your thoughts on Origins? Give us the quick rundown now that you've got it in your hands and been playing it.
I think it's great. I mean, I didn't play the other Assassin's Creed games, but I think a lot of people will vouch for what I would say on it, in a sense that it's good they took a break from it.
Yeah.
And released after like a year.
Yeah, they took a full year off.
Feels like they actually, this is going to sound horrible, like put effort into the game. Instead of them going, oh my gosh, guys, we need to release a game in 2 months. Just push it out the door, whatever. It feels smooth, the climbing smooth, combat makes sense, the actual leveling progression makes sense, the quests, everything. Seems very full, instead of, I'm sure everybody remembers the first Assassin's Creed was basically go into the city, do all the lookouts so you get everything, and then just try to like fill up the map so you know what's going on. It's pretty much how it was. Then you walked up, you stabbed the one guy, ran all the way back, said, I killed him, and then they're like, okay, go back out and do the exact same thing. That was a grind.
Yeah, I heard that.
Holy
the visuals
Lord.
in the first one was great, but so the Origins, they went a different direction in the gameplay side, right? Like it looks like it's kind of an RPG-ish spin versus an action game.
Yeah, which I prefer in a sense, because I like you picking your weapons to go with your style and everything, because it felt, once again, bouncing back to Assassin's Creed 1, when you got stripped, and then by the time you're on your final assassination, they're giving you stuff, you're like, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to do the same grind I've done every single time.
So you have character customization in the new one?
Not like, you do get to choose your weapons, shield, you know, all that. You don't get to change your face and everything like that. You are who you are.
You are in the story, yeah.
Yeah, but you do get lots of armor. You get your swords. You get all those like different bows. Some shoot multiple arrows. Some shoot a stronger one.
Interesting. And so they had there's a leveling system, like an experience point system and a leveling system.
Yeah, you also get skills and stuff like that. So it allows you to hold like 2 bows. So you can have a rapid fire one, a spray and pray. You do get to adjust a little more instead of just being like, I have a sword.
What about the open world side of the game? Like that was sort of the biggest thing that Assassin's Creed built its legacy on. Is that just cookie cutter to what they've previously did, or have they made changes to the open world?
I really only got like the first 3 to compare to, and I prefer this style where you kind of, it feels more
like an MMO,
World of Warcraft in a sense. Like you got to go out and explore and do quests, collect your items and stuff like that. And I think it was pretty popular with things like even Breath of the Wild went that route and everything. Because before, once again, bouncing the old Assassin's Creeds, it was basically you had your areas and it kind of looked like a tree. Like you'd go down the main route and then just do your little branch break off for each section, but you'd always be traveling the same path back and forth. So I like it. Nice twist.
I guess they're probably learning from games like The Division and to a lesser extent Destiny, but more of these open world games that are out nowadays. Now, Stu, just not to leave you out of the conversation, you have played Assassin's Creed at all, or is it a franchise that just totally?
Well, I was looking pretty heavily at getting Black Flag because I heard really good things about that one.
Yeah, but prior to that, no.
It's not something that occupies my mind terribly.
So you kind of were immune to it on the PC side of it, even though they did have annual PC releases. I guess it was more of a hyped product on console, Josh. Is that sort of, because I know you straddle both sides of the fence, right?
For which one?
For PC versus console, like you're unique in that you sort of are on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, I'm starting to
PC.
bounce more to PC though.
But did PC have the same feeling about Assassin's Creed? Because I mean, I only dabbled in the console communities, right? But did PC sort of feel the same way about Assassin's Creed that the console guys did, or did they just pass it over? Was it a beloved PC franchise?
I would say almost everyone's kind of hit the same boat that it was nice they took a break.
Yeah, okay.
And that is pretty much like the general consensus that I don't know if necessarily Origins, it's good. I don't know if it's as great as everybody thinks or just a comparison to them just machine gunning out a bunch of games that they're like, oh my gosh, it feels better than it was before.
Well, here's an interesting question that I have of both of you guys, and Stewart's are always full of good opinions on the matter. And think about this one. So now we've taken a year off, and they've released and I think it's critically acclaimed. Like this game reviewed well, and sold well.
I'm looking at it right now. It's reviewed quite well.
Okay, so now do we get a sequel next year? Like, will we get another Assassin's Creed next year? And now will the whole train just continue on from that? Like, will they have not learned anything and just go, okay, so we took a year off, it was great, they love this one, let's start her up again, boys, and just start rolling this stuff out again?
I don't imagine that they've learned their lesson, but I might be wrong.
So what's your thought? Do you think we'll see a new one next year?
Probably. I mean, I don't know though. I mean, they might have, because I mean, this, like the last one, Chronicles Russia.
Yeah, I remember that one.
I don't recall, but that got like a 62 for Xbox One, and Origins has an 85. So like.
So the dark side of the temptation is that they're like, hey, we have a successful game on our hands again.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep rolling with this. Josh, what's your thoughts on whether or not we're going to see it next year or whether we're going to have another year in between?
I feel like they're going to, and in some regards,
take a year or
I think they're going to release a game, really? And I think it's I want to say it's the money thing, because I mean, totally even bouncing to like Disney and stuff, they released Frozen. And then that thing just boomed. And they're like, we need to make a Frozen 2. We're doing it. Even though it probably makes no sense. They're going to botch and totally fail for what people actually enjoyed of the movie.
They can't resist the urge to make a sequel.
Same thing. Assassin's Creed Origins is doing really well. So they're like, okay, guys, we did something right here. Let's quickly get another one out there. Origins 2, let's hit it. And then it's going to flop because it won't have what we enjoyed about Origins in it.
Right. Now Stu's going to blow his mind here if I don't answer his question.
No, damn it. The time frame is done. Sorry.
Oh, darn it. Sorry. I was just going to say disclosure again. The only reason why we know the movie Frozen exists is because obviously our significant others, and in my case, my children, told me about the movie, right?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, good. Just getting that out of the way. So my opinion on it, then I'm going to side with, I think, both you guys. I really think. Okay, so I don't know. Oh yeah, Stuart, nice joke in the chat. Okay, Stuart made a comment. He said at the moment, he says it's because they can't let it go. Let it go.
Oh, please no.
That was good. Good timing on that. Just busted
that was supposed to be a private.
No, that's okay. I couldn't resist. It had to be public. Honestly, here's what I think, guys. On Assassin's Creed, I think they're gonna let it go. Let it go. They're going to take a year off, and the reason why I think they will is I looked at their DLC plan in the remember in our demo copies we got, Josh, they sent us a sort of a content roadmap, and it looks like they're filling up the year with content. It just looks to me like they're taking a page out of the Battlefield playbook. You know how Battlefield releases, and then they have a year worth of content, and then they don't release a full sequel until the following year.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to go that route, but to the point of whether or not they could go the other way, because I think now that they've got a successful one on their hands again, they just want to jump back into the pool. So it could go either way, but I think we might see another year wait in between. It depends on what they can do with the world, like if they can plug in content versus having to create a whole new game, then they might just go that route, like an MMO style, and just plug in expansions and extra stuff to do.
Yeah,
sort of like how the Division did it. Okay, so let's flip over to Call of Duty, because this is an interesting one actually, and I can't believe I'm actually having a conversation about Call of Duty in a positive light. But Josh will attest I've had a hate relationship with Call of Duty for the past decade.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, to say the least, and there's reasons for it, and we won't go into it. But the biggest thing for me is that Call of Duty has always, to me, represented the laziness of the development industry. You know, after I think Modern Warfare 2, I'll give them credit. I don't believe they'd gotten to that point with Modern Warfare 2. I think that was still kind of when Infinity Ward was the original company and they were really getting innovative. As soon as that game was done, I think it was just a matter of copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. I mean, they've definitely changed the settings and stuff, so we can't accuse them of being completely lazy. But a yearly game, you can't resist the fact that you need to carry assets over. You need to pretty much just copy the game and just tweak it.
Yeah.
So here's the interesting about the new Call of Duty is they followed on the footsteps of Battlefield 1 last year. And they went World War II. So not the same genre, obviously the Second World War, but they took it back to basics. And that in itself caused me to sort of hesitate a bit about my judging them, because it shows that they were at least listening to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought the game, I've been playing it, and on the surface, it's Call of Duty. They haven't really changed gameplay. I mean, it is still classic Call of Duty, and the game engine is still the same game engine. They've just been layering it up to be next gen, but it's still the core same stuff. To me, what's different about it is they've actually gone and changed sort of how we socially interact within the game, and also they've plugged in a lot of new conventions, things like loot boxes and whatever we want to talk about as far as liking or hating them. They're in the game. But it seems different. So I'm not going to keep rambling about my thoughts. I'll quickly go to you guys. What is your thought, without having played it, Josh, on what you've seen so far of the Call of Duty?
I guess my thought on it is the thing that's always bugged me about Call of Duty, and it could be standalone, is one, it feels like it's the same game over and over. And two, I feel like Call of Duty is always reacting to things. Like, Battlefield 1 announced, you know, we're doing World War 1, and then Call of Duty that year wasn't. So everybody's like, oh, they lost, they've done it. So now they bounced to World War 2 and everything. And, you know, other games like Division, all that are doing this open MMO, and even with like Assassin's Creed and everything, everybody seems to be reacting. As soon as one person has that great idea, you've got to get it in theirs. Like, you know, loot boxes, micro, everything. And that's where it bugs me on Call of Duty, is it just feels like they're always reacting to what seems to be big, instead of them being like, this is going to be the next big thing because we're Call of Duty, trust us.
Well, even if you look at the Nazi zombie mode in Call of Duty, Gears of War 2 created the concept of the wave-based survival mode. That was the first game to have a survival mode in it. And then that year, we got all these games coming out with survival modes. Heck, even Batman has a wave-based survival mode. You know, and then Zombies is basically a wave-based survival mode. So, Stuart, what's your opinion on the Call of Duty legacy and your thoughts?
I think the problem that most multiplayer games have, and it's not just Call of Duty, but it started with Call of Duty after Modern Warfare 2, is the tendency to try and shrink the skill gap between new and experienced players by altering the effects of weapons and gear and designing multiplayer levels to increase the random number of player interactions so much that everybody is bound to get, you know, X number of kills.
Right, and that goes back to that whole noob mentality, right?
Just enough kills to make you feel accomplished. Now, I don't think last week we talked about this recent development with who was it?
The matchmaking patent.
Yes. Yeah. Activision's
We talked about the loot boxes. I don't believe we touched on the matchmaking patent.
I think that hit afterwards, but that sort of ties into it where they're trying to engineer an experience that even if you don't try at all, you will still come away feeling like you have achieved something, and that will make you want to come back.
Yeah, they're basically altering the code of the game to influence the player experience, which that brings up a whole moral issue. Josh, are you following that, or are you totally out to left field on what's going on with that?
I didn't even know this was a thing.
Yeah, so essentially what they're doing is there's a couple things they're doing. They're filing patents on their matchmaking system. So one of the things they're doing is that they're building in matchmaking to put you in a game with people who are better than you. That's one element of it. What Stewart's talking about is another one, but this is one that they are filing about, the ability to put you into a match with people who are a higher rank and higher than you, so you can see some of the amazing content that they've purchased. So for example, if you're a player who's bought in a lot of skins and special emblems, they want their matchmaking to put that guy into a match with a player who hasn't, so that they can see those cool things and go, oh, that's cool, I want that, and therefore be more inclined to make a purchase.
I did not know that, but
Stu, fill me in on that if I'm missing the boat on something.
So you're not missing anything, but I think the back end thing, which is really insidious, is they're gonna use algorithms to data mine people's play styles. So they're actually using a predictive algorithm to determine how you like to play, and that's what they're using to determine the gear that you have, and then the gear that you'll probably want. And then they're going to put you in games with people with the gear so that you can buy it, and then they're going to
make it so you can get kills with that gear.
Yeah, they're going to change, or I guess I've read through part of the patent document, but it's not anything that I'm familiar with. So my understanding, with just a cursory read through of it, is that they will try and engineer the maps and your spawn points to optimize the gear that you have. So
that you've bought something and you immediately have good results with said gear to justify the purchase in your mind, and maybe you'll buy more.
Yeah, it's not about a challenge. It's about creating a positive user experience.
Yeah, and that is exactly, and those were the patents. And so this is what's happening right now, and they're filing these patents. So it kind of strips back the meat off the bones of these systems and makes you go, wait a minute here, what's going on?
It's some crazy shit. I was blown away by it.
Can I make another confession? I'm going to make a confession because I made a confession last week about buying digital goods. So this goes hand in hand with what we said last week, but in regards to what Stuart just said, I bought a piece of DLC because I saw a player in my match with it and I thought it looked cool, so I went and bought it.
You sheep.
I'm such a sucker when it comes to these conversations. Like everything we're talking about, I am like patient zero probably.
Oh, geez.
It was Titanfall of all games. A guy on the match was running around with this cool blue and yellow Titan, blue and orange Titan, and I'm like, that looks sick. So I went back. I backed out and bought it, and yeah, sorry.
I feel like I'm the one that the game industry hates because I don't buy any of that stuff. I figure any skin, texture packs, or anything like that, I'm like, it's a waste of my money.
Yeah, no.
I'd much rather buy like
an
actual full game. It's like buying stickers for your car. I just, not for me.
I did that too.
It's an obscene waste of money.
Okay.
Like, no matter what we say going forward, we're just going to chuck you under the bus there, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Even if it's only 99 cents, it's 99 cents spent on nothing.
I know.
Literally, you could have just thrown $1 into the road. Like,
just lit $1 on fire. Just be like, whatever.
So I will say this about this year's Call of Duty. Everything we just talked about is there in all its glory. As far as the loot crates, the loot boxes, the skins, all of that's there. I think for me, what sold me on it this year was, one, they did go back to basics as far as the gunplay. And that was a big thing because I think the game had kind of gotten ahead of itself and given players too much power in the way that they controlled the match, running on walls, jumping through the air, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and so they've toned back on kill streaks a little bit differently, but the biggest thing for me was just the fact that they're embracing a very cool environment. So when I play the matches now, I think they feel a little bit more immersive. It's not foreign to me. You know, we're not playing on space stations or weird futuristic bases. We're playing boots on the ground on the shores of, you know, Omaha, or, you know, in the different various theaters of war, and it feels cool, like fields and bushes and rocky castles and stuff. So they did good by me this year. Check in with me next year and see how I'll feel about it then. But that's pretty much all I have to say on the Call of Duty side. Any passing or any closing thoughts on the video game craziness for sequels that doesn't pertain to loot boxes, because we talked about loot boxes last time?
I just hope sequels finally just crash and burn.
Well,
I'm so tired of
sequels. Not to open this can of worms, but what happens if the video game industry did decide to stop doing sequels? Do you think, because here's the thing, back in the day, Genesis, Super Nintendo, there wasn't a lot of sequels. Like if you go back to that era of video games, there were sequels, but there weren't a lot of sequels. Like they didn't come out every year. Right, like the whole concept of it didn't exist. Like we got Street Fighter 2, maybe a couple years later or more we'd get Part 3. You know, you just didn't get a lot of it. So what happens now in the current landscape if that happened? Do you think the industry would implode? Do you think we would see a drop in sales? Like, do you think the industry needs sequels in order to sustain itself?
I don't think it does. What's interesting though is, I could be wrong in this, I seem to remember back in Super Nintendo, Genesis, all that, you know, Xbox and all that, they loved making games based on movies like Harry Potter and all that. That seems to have died.
Yeah,
I could be wrong on that. I don't remember picking up anything for, like, except for Lego games making it. Like, I don't remember any games based on any latest. No. Like, I remember Lord of the Rings games. I remember Harry Potter games. I remember.
Well, the industry got it in its head that movie games suck, but it's not the movie games suck. It's that the development of those games didn't pan out. Yeah, I mean, they had a very limited time to build these games, right? Because they had to. But you're right. Back in the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis days, in the early days, video game movies were quite prolific because those were. Yeah, and those were great properties to build. I mean, I remember buying Sega Genesis games, Terminator, you know, Judge Dredd, like all these movies, Ninja Turtles, like everything. It was movie. Yeah. But you're right. Now I think they're just scared because they've had a lack of success in the past decade on movie games. It's funny though, because now it's going the other way, right? Because now movies are copying games. Yep. Now those are the ones that suck. The games don't suck. It's the movie tie-ins that suck.
Well, the thing is, I think in this day and age, everyone has now gotten this fear of losing money. And even you can look at movies, you can look at music. People are doing covers of old songs. I mean, movies, we're getting reboots from the 80s and the 90s even.
So creativity is getting stifled because people are more concerned about making money on their investment versus creatively expressing themselves.
They're concerned about losing money on their investment.
Right, correct, yeah. So you're right, because it does cover across all genres of media, right? Not just gaming, but people are afraid to strike out in the new territory.
Exactly, and I think that's where sequels are just going to continue to thrive, because the instant they slap Call of Duty on it, for the most part, they'll sell the game. Like, you pick it up, you see it on the shelf, you're like, oh, Call of Duty, I know this. Or, oh, Assassin's Creed. I mean, I'll say I'm going to buy the next Halo game without knowing anything about it because it's Halo and it's what I'll do. But
so are they programming us essentially now by saying, you know, we as gamers now are scared to buy anything that doesn't have a sequel to it because we don't know whether the quality is going to be there? Is that what's happening to us as players?
I think the biggest thing that killed it is the price. That's what kills me in a sense for games and everything.
So we're less willing to take a chance on a game if we don't know what it's going to be like.
$90 to get like some DLC in your game. That's a huge risk. I remember, you know, with used games dying down because the day one DLC codes were being stripped and everything like that. I remember going in, I'll spend $20 to try a game out, whatever. But now it's like you got to spend $80. It's like, do you grab the next Halo game when you know you like Halo, or the next Call of Duty game, or do you go with things like, you know, Detroit Become Human, or
Division, or
Division, or Zero Horizon Dawn, or something that you haven't heard of? You're like,
yeah. What was that, Stu?
Some of the most recent kind of video game flops, like No Man's Sky, they promised the world and did not deliver, and people, you know, they were able to get their money back, but there's still that anxiety about having it kind of.
It's a trust issue now, because we trust the games that we've played in the past that we like, but we don't know about unknown games. I'm
not trying to suggest that, you know, that publisher is to completely blame for this. This is a long time coming, but if you're going to point to sort of contemporary catalysts for anxiety about video game investments, I think that would be a prime example. Yeah,
good call. Okay, well, I'm going to keep an eye on how this goes throughout the year, but I am looking forward to 2018, because there looks to be some new IPs floating around in the pool next year. So,
well, interjecting real fast, Gina's in the chat room. Totally mentioned Anthem, if you guys remember that game.
Yeah. The E3 trailer, and I just showed it to Gina, actually. And I was going to say that's the one that's got me looking. The only thing that's got me scared about that game, though, is the precedent for which that game is probably going to take ideas from, which is the Division Destiny of the world. And I'm hoping that EA has enough forethought to say, we've seen the mistakes that those games have made, and go our own way with it, versus just copying it, because it looked like it was a successful endeavor for those other companies. It's interesting that you mentioned that. I just saw a feed on my Facebook that said that EA is now considering whether they do or don't want to incorporate loot boxes in Anthem next year. Right? Because the loot box conversation has gotten to be such a huge deal in the past couple months that now development they're now questioning it, going, do we do that? So
I worry, because EA is on it, and I know that EA, I'm pretty sure, just people are.
Well, they just stuck loot boxes in Battlefront 2, and
people are freaking on that, because I think even when you spend some of the I don't know what they call them, but I'm going to call them heroes. Yeah. With like Darth Vader and stuff like that, people got pretty chody on that, because a guy said, like, I paid $80 and Darth Vader's locked, and EA responded to that, and everybody's just losing it.
So like you pay for the game, but you still have to complete things within the game. I don't think they're going to make him pay money to get Darth Vader.
Well, if you want, I could read their official response to the guy saying that.
Do it.
Okay, so this is where I'm worried about EA games going forward. It said the intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment for unlocking different heroes. As for cost, we selected initial values based upon data from the open beta and other adjustments made to milestone rewards before launch. Among other things, we're looking at average per player credit earn rates on a daily basis, and we'll be making constant adjustments to ensure the players have challenges that are compelling, rewarding, and of course attainable via gameplay. We appreciate the candid feedback and the passion the community has put forth around the current topics here on Reddit, our forums, and across numerous social media outlets. Our team will continue to make changes, monitor community feedback, and update everyone as often as we can. And everyone is just downvoting them into oblivion.
So you can buy Vader with real world credits if you don't want to put in the gameplay time.
Pretty much, but people are frustrated that since they're paying a ton of money to get this game, and there's still things locked behind a paywall in a sense.
Yeah, or a gameplay wall. Interesting. Well, I mean, this is a new era for gaming, guys, and I don't think it's going away, like we said in our last episode, but I think we need to be a little bit more selective in the games we get based on what you just described, right? Fair enough. Stuart, before we leave the video game topic and move on to our tabletop section, I have one question for you.
Oh, God.
If you could buy a gun that would give you a better KD ratio for $2 in a game, would you buy the gun?
Man, you've already done this to me once.
I need a straight answer for our viewing audience.
They demand it.
No, I refuse.
You refuse to answer it, or you refuse to buy it?
Both. No,
Both?
just kidding. No, I mean, like I said before, yeah, probably, once or twice. Do I think
Okay.
it would be a continuous thing for me? No.
Okay, good. I'll take that as an answer. Let's switch topics, guys, and jump over to our second and final topic of the night. Unless we take any questions from the community here that's watching. So tabletop gaming, on my side of the fence, sometimes tabletop gaming presents a little bit calmer, a little bit quieter side of the gaming industry. I feel like anyway, it's not quite as hectic and frantic. I will say this about the gaming industry, though, is the diehards in tabletop gaming are diehards. Like video game diehards are diehards, and they're pretty crazy and zealous about their product. But tabletop guys, if you cross these guys, they are just you don't want to. Well, Stuart's, yeah, he's gonna, he's a tabletop guy. I just get scared of some of the dedicated guys that are out there in the tabletop world. But the reason why I say that is that, there seems to be there's a lot more gone into a tabletop hobbyist, right? When you look at their purchases, right? Like a video gamer buys a copy of a game, spends $80, doesn't like it, throws it in the trash, whatever. He's got some opinions. Tabletop gamers spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on their hobby, right?
Spent thousands.
Yeah. I mean, so when a game company goes and changes something, it's a big deal, right? And it kind of really hits home a lot more. So tonight's topic isn't necessarily about games that are being changed or sequels and stuff. It's more about games that are being resurrected. So we have a couple games to talk about. One game has already launched this year, and it was Warhammer 40K, and they came out with 8th edition, right, Stu?
Yes.
8th edition launched, and on the flip side, 8th edition was widely loved and totally accepted and embraced.
Critically acclaimed.
Critically acclaimed. So that's not a big deal. I mean, we don't want to dwell on that so much, but there's a game that's coming out this month, and it's from the same studio, Games Workshop, and it's called Necromunda. Yeah. And to give viewers a quick history, not a long one on Necromunda, it was a game that was released about 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, 1985.
1985. And so essentially the game was a spin-off of the 40K tabletop game in that it was a smaller scale skirmish-based version of 40K with a very specific narrative that put it in a certain setting and referred to as gang warfare. Yeah. Very cool game. I actually bought that game before 40K. So actually that was my game that got me into the GW hobby, and then I actually expanded into 40K. But so the game was very well done. They supported it quite well. And eventually, in traditional Games Workshop fashion, they just kind of shut it down and stopped making content for it and stopped making figures for it.
During the dark age.
Yeah. And I mean, they had reprints and stuff that came out to try and revitalize it, and they started selling the miniatures again for a while, but it just kind of gestated. Now, we got an announcement this year just saying that they're actually relaunching it, but not only relaunching it, Stuart, I guess what would be the better way to say it? Reimagining? Would that be
revitalizing it?
Revitalizing, but that
from
includes
the ground up.
Right. So this is not just a reissue.
No. Yeah. If you've been living under a rock of GW news, we're getting completely new Necromunda with new sculpts and terrain, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, and so for me, there's two parts to my personalities. I'm very keen on the hobby side, but I always look at the business side. And so I've been looking at some of the internet chatter about this new release, and there's now not an overwhelming love of the game necessarily, because the more details have come to light about what this new game entails. And there's some parallels to our previous conversation already, in that it looks like GW is fleshing the game out. These are the concerns. This is, not my personal opinion, but they're fleshing the game out to be more than just a one-shot, buy the box set, you're done game. It looks like they're stretching the game out now to incorporate future purchases, much like we just talked about in DLC and expansion. So now you buy the core set, and that's not the complete game as it will be in, say, a year from now. I mean, it gives you the complete game, but give me the better explanation of how that would work, Stu.
I mean, if we want a roadmap of what Necromunda is going to look like in a couple of years, we can look at Blood Bowl, which they released year and something ago with a core box, and now they're releasing team expansions and new pitches, and
which is fine, right? Because that's the status quo of all games in the industry.
and like Blood Bowl is insanely popular. Not so much here. I mean, there's a couple leagues going on in town, but especially in like Europe and Australia, they love Blood Bowl. Love it. It's just it's probably one of the most popular specialist games, which is what they used to call that entire range over there. So like it makes sense that they would try their first foray into re-energizing these games with a fairly solid investment. Or
let me throw some points at you as to what specifically are bugging some people. So this is something and I'll let you weigh in on this as well, Josh, because it is parallel to what we just talked about. So the core box is coming. In the original Necromunda box, you would have gotten 2 different competing gangs and some card terrain. And the rule book that came with the original incorporated rules for all of the game's current and future product as far as the figures go. So if you say a year from now you bought another gang, you would still go back to your core Necromunda book that came in your box set and reference statistics and such for those figures. Even though you didn't own the figures, they printed all the material you need to know in that respect. So I guess the stuff that I'm seeing online is that they're now fleshing it out to the point where you're going to get the core box set, you're going to get 2 gangs, and they don't have any other gangs ready for sale just yet. So to that note, the rule book that they're printing doesn't incorporate information for any future releases because they obviously don't have that worked out yet, or whatever the case is. So I guess some of the complaints is that now it looks like GW is going to be sort of like what they did with Destiny, you know, how they kind of like said, here's the full game and let's just kind of parse it out and create a product that will encourage people to buy more product that we're going to create to have the full package, as opposed to just giving it all up front. So that's the arguments I'm seeing online. So this goes into our topic about how do you reimagine and rebring a game forward, but in today's sensibilities, knowing that it's all about the money and about these developers trying to make the most of a release. It's kind of a tricky thing to do, right? So Josh, I know Stuart's got an opinion. I'm going to throw to you just based on what you know of the industry and what your thoughts are. Is this something that we should just not even shrug about and go, hey, this is just the way things are now? Or is there anything wrong with that? In my mind, I guess would be the question I'd ask you. Is that totally okay?
I think it's just the way we've gone with
across
everything.
Gaming.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, pick anything and we're there. Cell phones, we're on what, Samsung Galaxy 5, the iPhone 10 and 8 just came out. Like,
so it's just a byproduct of consumerism.
I think, unfortunately, it's just gone that way with everything. I mean, for the most part, even on PC side, you're limited down to certain options, and
that's just
everything.
You get what you can get. You know, you don't complain about it, I guess, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, we kind of did it ourselves when everybody stopped branching out for new, unique things. We didn't give it a chance, and we just keep going, give us the same thing over and over again. So companies are like, all right, let's make some money. So
I guess you could call it smart marketing. What's your thoughts on the matter, Stuart, as far as being an actual tabletop game or how they're going about this launch?
I mean, I think, they're going about it pretty much how I would expect a game company to go about it. They're releasing a core product. Basically the core products are the Escher and Goliath gang box set, and then each of those gangs individually, and their decks and dice, templates.
Yeah, I saw that they have unique dice that they're going to be selling as well.
And then another rule book that will have the stuff for 2D terrain, because basically they've made the box game like you're playing in the sort of superstructure under the hive, all the tunnels and passageways. And this was purely because they didn't want to put card terrain like the original Necromunda box set had in this set because they don't do cardboard 3D terrain anymore.
Mhm.
And you know, if they put a full set of plastic terrain, the game would be $500. Nobody
Yeah.
would buy it. So they tried to, I think, elegantly engineer their way around both of those problems, providing a full enclosed game
Mhm.
that's playable. It looks fun. I've read one battle report in the White Dwarf. Looks great.
Yeah.
And
So I mean, there's yeah. Go ahead.
this rulebook is going to allow for more classic play. My theory, and I have nothing to base this on, and I just sort of was thinking about this while you guys were talking. I bet in probably by wave 2 or 3 of Necromunda, so we'll have a total of maybe 3 or 4 gangs. We're probably going to see a reprint rulebook. It's just going to be the Necromunda rulebook, and it will have all the stuff.
Yeah. Well, because I didn't mention, but they are planning on releasing the content for the additional figures as free downloads. So, you will be able to get stats and stuff for the figures when they come out, I think, as free PDFs that they're going to roll out.
Which is great. I'm glad that GW has decided to lower the paywall where it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, overall, my thought on the matter is that this is just the world we live in. You can get upset and you can get angry about the way these companies are handling new products and sequels and all that. But the reality is we're not going to reverse this change. Like you either pick and choose your battles and maybe you don't buy as many games anymore, but either you give up on the hobbies or you just sort of adapt to the way that we're being sold the product, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure, like you said, Josh, you could point to a million other different examples within consumer buying that is the same as what we're going through in the gaming industry. It's just the evolution of consumerism for the most part.
Pretty much. It's unfortunately, we've done it to ourselves. Gosh darn it.
Yeah, it is. And if we weren't buying the product, then they wouldn't keep making it. So obviously somewhere in the world, people are buying the product.
If they weren't making those models so freaking beautiful,
well, that's the thing.
Have to.
And that's the other thing is people obviously don't like, especially on the video game side, when you talk about, I get really upset when entitled gamers, voice their opinions these days, right? And I say to them, like, look, do you realize that I was playing with freaking pixels? I was playing video games with pixels throwing a pixel at each other, and it was called Pong.
Yep.
And I was happy. Like, I don't understand. And then, like, to Stuart's point, these miniature games, like, sure, you're pissed off that Necromunda is not the same as it was, but go back and look at the old Necromunda figures and look at the new sculpts, and you tell me that they're not better.
Yeah, they're objectively better.
So people, they forget the value that they're getting. I think they just get caught up in their entitlement as far as cost. They don't see that maybe this product's gotten better in some ways.
I've seen some valid criticisms leveled that the faces of the Escher gangs are decidedly more rugged. And,
well, they were meant to be handsome? Kind of like, handsome instead of the delicate female model.
So that's
just stylistic choices.
Stupid complaint, but whatever. I think you have to weigh that against the fact that they're plastic, 100%, super customizable, multi-part kits.
Yeah.
It's unprecedented. We've never had anything this modular before.
And that points to the value of it, because people don't see the good necessarily. They just want to focus on the bad.
You can buy replacement female heads.
There you go.
I guarantee you. I'm going to look it up now.
Well, you could just steal some from an Infinity Figures and make it work. So overall, Stu, while you're typing, what's your thought on the tabletop side on this Necromunda launch? And we'll close off the book on this process. Do you think they're going to hit a good point with it, or do you think it's going to be based on early chatter? Is it being widely accepted?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I said, do you think the launch of the game is in good shape? Like, do you think we're
of Necromunda?
Yeah, of Necromunda.
Yeah,
based on what
absolutely.
Yeah.
Beyond any shadow of a doubt, it's gonna be another slam dunk. They're gonna make so much money.
So then I consider that a success. I mean, for the most part, I mean, the negative, the naysayers might be a little bit here and there, but. So what was the information you found out about swapping? And then we'll. We'll see.
I'm just looking up.
Have you finished? Have you finished Assassin's Creed yet, Josh?
No, I have not finished it by any means.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't think I'm
quality
close yet. I'm really going for side quests.
Yeah, stretching it out.
I'm sinking my teeth into it. I'm not in a rush to get to that end zone.
All right, we'll have to dig Division out soon and play some more of that.
I still haven't beaten that game.
That's
I'm
okay.
one mission away from finishing. I'm on the last mission.
No, that's good. I keep going back to it. It's
Mhm.
the testament of the game is the fact that I keep enjoying myself when I do go back to it. They've got some new DLC coming that's free in a couple months, I think.
I'm surprised that game hasn't died yet. It's not to sound horrible or mean or anything. Like they keep releasing stuff, and the content they released, I think, would have been great if it was way closer to launch. Like
they tiered it out like every 4 months. I think is how they stretched it out. But I think they're working on the sequel, so I think that's a secret thing. But I'm not sure what their plans are. Whether or not it's just going to be more plug-in or if it's going to be a whole new game like Destiny. I read an article where the developers were pointing to the fact that they didn't want to go too far out of Manhattan with this game. So if people are expecting them to patch in a whole new area, it's not going to go too far away from what they created. Because that's the whole premise of this game, right? Stewart, what'd you find?
Okay, so Victoria Miniatures
Will sell me some pretty Escher heads instead of the
well, they're selling
ones.
Various female heads, so you can get 12 female heads.
Yeah.
In resin for $8.90 US.
There you go. So if you're unhappy with Game Workshop sculpts, you can go ahead and swap.
And if you can't take a bald head and then take the hair, the ornate head crest or whatever, Escher Ganger, and put that, like, really, what are you doing in this hobby?
Yeah, this is a deep rabbit hole conversation anyway, so we're gonna try and not go too far into it. I'm happy with the sculpts, but yes, for those people who are unhappy with GW's recent sculpts, then there you go. So guys, thanks for the feedback tonight. My viewers there, looks like we hit 3 live viewers tonight. As always, this podcast will be available on our YouTube channel to watch in the archives, and we'll shout that out when it's done. I don't think we have a set schedule yet for our podcast. We're aiming for a weekly podcast, and hopefully we'll be able to stick to that. But for everybody out there, keep tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe our YouTube channel and check us out at www.enterthegamenexus.com. Anything else you guys want to shout out before we turn off for the night?
I got nothing.
Okay, Stu. Okay, guys, thanks for joining in, and we'll talk to you soon.